This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Almost exactly a year ago today, I put out my video on Ridley Scott's Napoleon, a film I liked a lot more than most people. A year later, the guy is back with Gladiator 2, which is a different story. A quick disclaimer, I've only become familiar with Scott's now classic Gladiator 1 as of recent, like hours before seeing the sequel recent, which, let me confirm, goes incredibly hard. I can't believe I slept on it all these years. It remains the most impressive example of how Scott uses scale. For a film with so much action and violence, there's also a tremendous amount of soul on screen. It's just a damn good film. I was really moved by it, and I wasn't expecting that at all. One of those where you watch it and go, they do not make them like they used to. But they actually do. They made another Gladiator, and Ridley Scott directed it. It stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hetchinger, and Denzel Washington's in it, by the way. The film takes place many years after the events of the first film. Rome is led by a group of tyrannical emperors, and we follow Lucius as he enters the Colosseum to fight back for his home. If you can't tell, that is like essentially the same storyline as the first film, and the film is not unaware of this. In fact, it's actually frustratingly aware of this. There are loads and loads of parallels and flashbacks. A major theme here is Lucius feeling the need to protect and live up to the past. These parallels can be anywhere from serviceable, with some cheeky shots of hands at the beginning and end of both films, to exhausting, with weird flashbacks and scenes of characters just yapping about the events of the first one, which added close to nothing. This thing is long, clocking in at just under 2 hours and 30 minutes, and so much time is spent just Paul Mescal being like, this happened, and now I'm here. It's another case of a sequel with its feet so stuck in the mud of the first film, where it feels like the actual story needs to be about living up to the greatness of the first, or just reckoning with what the past has left behind. And when a story like this is done this blandly, I really couldn't care less. It just reads as a cop-out to me. A shame considering what this sequel could have looked like. It's this incredibly mediocre story that makes me quick to defend Mescal's incredibly mediocre performance. There was a lot working against Mescal in this film, having to follow up Russell Crowe's career-defining performance, his character literally being put in the shadow of Maximus, his character having very few defining traits that feel unique to him, having to be in the same movie as Denzel Washington, this being the first film where he's not just a really sad guy. I still consider Mescal to be one of the most exciting new actors we have, don't get me wrong. His work in everything else he's been in has been really superb. His way of translating these deeply internalized emotions to the screen is pretty captivating. But this film, and I hate to say this, kind of proves his limits as an actor. His face is perfect for this role. He looks like a statue, but he's delivering these lines like a guy who just stumbled out of his bedroom after a good cry sesh. But again, maybe if they gave him a bit more to work with as a character, he could have gone somewhere further with it. You know who does go far? Is Denzel Washington. This probably comes as no shock to anyone. He's one of the best to ever do it, but that becomes even clearer when he's next to some of these other actors. Not all of them, and I'll get to that in a second, but Denzel eats up the screen. He understands it's not just about understanding a character, it's about screen presence, about how you interact with the shot as an actor. He uses the frame perfectly to communicate his level of power throughout the film, a skill that just feels beyond what anybody else involved could do. I guess the simplest way of putting it is similar to some of the best performances from the last few years, like Lily Gladstone in Flower Moon, Barry Keoghan in Banshees, Charles Melton in May December. Every time Denzel is on screen, I locked in uncontrollably. That said, I've seen some people talk about Denzel as though he's the only good performance in this thing. Joseph Quinn is fine, though he drifts into overacting territory a bit often, in my opinion. Pedro Pascal also just kind of fine. Fred, on the other hand, is slimy and weaselly in all the right ways. I had so much fun watching him, but I also wanted to punch him in the face every time he was on screen. Any scene between him and Denzel is just the best. They're both totally enveloped by these roles, and to see them bounce off of each other was so much more intoxicating than Mescal just moping around his cell. Gladiator 2 faced a similar sort of scrutiny that Napoleon underwent when it came to historical inaccuracies. I'm clearly not a Roman Empire expert, but guys riding in on rhinos, just ridiculous. The sharks thing may have been real, we don't know, but anytime you introduce sharks into any story, it's a crazy choice, which is why I struggle to get that worked up over stuff like that. I am in fact entertained, but that does kind of get to the crux of this whole thing. Is that enough? Is being entertained enough? Let's backtrack a little. Ridley Scott still has. I realized halfway through this, as flawed as it is, that I really like him as a filmmaker. He's very reliable when it comes to crafting enormous stories. And in a time where the biggest movies coming out still feel small and limiting, it's a breath of fresh air to see a Ridley Scott film that still has its roots in what makes cinema special, the scale. When he finds a story, he tells it well. You just have to question if the story he chooses here is worth telling in the first place, if he chooses the right one to begin with. Gladiator 2 is incredibly safe, literally existing only in the shadows of the first film. It goes a step beyond something like Joker Folie à Deux in that it actually cares about the viewer and gives them what they want: crazy battles, over-the-top action, sweaty hunks. But why are we riding the coattails of a film from 24 years ago? The thing is, the film does attempt to drift into a new, interesting direction with Denzel's character, someone who was once a slave under Marcus Aurelius, now navigating his way through the system and eventually to the throne. Ask most people, that's the undeniably more fascinating story here. I get that following someone who goes about finding power in ways that act against or manipulate the current system isn't really the type of person people want to follow and or root for at a time like this, but the choice to focus more on a character who's determined to protect the past is even more backwards and unsatisfying, in my opinion. I think this is why I've always had a soft spot for Scott's Napoleon. Many people claim it as feeling uninterested in the entire story, or a Cliff Notes version of Napoleon's story. But to me, I did feel as though Scott chose to focus specifically on the relationship with Josephine and how that relationship impacted his decisions as a leader, which I found really interesting and, dare I say, really fun. Gladiator 2, on the other hand, is telling two stories and it picks the most boring option. It plays it safe and worships the first film in a way that feels, frankly, pointless by the end. You walk away relatively satisfied, your belly full of action and bloody battles, but you also walk away with a message that's both uninteresting and, more importantly, insincere. I was entertained, for sure, and I am endlessly grateful that I get to see a new Ridley Scott film every year at this point. But we deserve better from a cast like this, right? And that's what I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Go watch Gladiator 2 and form your own opinion, and before you head out. I want to thank this week's sponsor, Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. With Squarespace, you can start a completely personalized website with their new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. We can choose from professionally curated layout and styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up, tailored to your brand or business and optimized for every device. Easily launch that website and get discovered fast with their integrated optimized SEO tools so that you show up more often to more people and grow the way you want. Also gotta mention their video collections feature, which allows you to upload video content, organize your video library, and showcase your content on beautiful video pages. And while we're at it, their visual design tools grow credibility and engage visitors with an unrivaled suite of visual design effects built in and ready to go on any Squarespace website. Create your own online aesthetic with dozens of modern and intuitive options, then connect social and multimedia accounts in just a few clicks to grow your brand's footprint. You can go to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and when you're ready to launch that beautiful website, go to squarespace.com/Karsten to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.